When you think of American farming, one green and yellow giant towers above every field in the nation: John Deere. This agricultural titan has not only built machines, but literally broke the prairie that feeds the world. For over 180 years, John Deere has been the backbone of American agriculture, with their machines working on farms in all 50 states and over 100 countries worldwide. That's right, John Deere isn't just a big name. It's the most trusted brand in farming, controlling nearly 60% of the large tractor market in North America. But how did a broke Vermont blacksmith with just $73 to his name become the king of American agriculture? What kind of disasters nearly destroyed everything he built? This is the untold story of John Deere, a company that has literally fed the world. The abandoned boy who would feed the world. Let's roll back to circa 1804. In Rutland, Vermont, a boy named John Deere lived with his family in a world where farming meant backbreaking labor and frequent crop failure. His father, William Reynold Deere, was a struggling tailor who could barely keep food on the table during the harsh Vermont winters. The Deere family was barely scraping by, but they were together. Then everything changed. When John was just 4 years old, his father abandoned the family without warning, leaving his mother, Polly, to raise 5 children alone with no income and no support. From that moment, young John learned a lesson that would shape everything he built. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. By age 17, John was apprenticed to Captain Benjamin Lawrence, a master blacksmith in Middlebury, Vermont. John wasn't just learning a trade, he was obsessed with perfection. While other apprentices hammered out simple horseshoes, John would stay late into the night, practicing his craft until every piece of work met his impossible standards. His reputation for quality spread throughout Vermont. Farmers would travel 30 miles just to have John Deere repair their equipment because they knew anything bearing his mark would last twice as long as work done by other smiths. But Vermont was getting crowded, and opportunities were limited for a young man with big dreams. In 1836, at age 32, John made a decision that would change American agriculture forever. He packed up his wife Demarius and their children, loaded everything they owned into a wagon, and headed west to Grand Detour, Illinois. When they arrived after weeks of difficult travel, John had exactly $73 to his name and a set of blacksmith tools. Everyone thought he was crazy to leave a successful business for the unknown frontier, the prairie that defeated every farmer. When John Deere set up his blacksmith shop in Grand Detour, Illinois, he discovered a problem that was destroying the American dream. The rich black prairie soil that looked so promising was actually a farmer's nightmare. This wasn't the light, workable soil of New England. This was thick, sticky clay that clung to plows like glue. The situation was so bad that farmers had to stop every few yards to scrape mud off their cast iron plows with wooden paddles. What should have been a day's plowing turned into a week-long ordeal. Oxen would collapse from exhaustion before a single acre could be properly worked. Just imagine, families who had traveled hundreds of miles to claim their piece of the frontier were starving because they couldn't get crops in the ground. The westward expansion that was supposed to make America the breadbasket of the world was grinding to a halt because nobody could figure out how to farm the prairie. John watched farmer after farmer struggle with their useless plows, and his blacksmith's mind started working. He'd heard about a broken steel saw blade that had been discarded at the local sawmill, and suddenly he had an idea that seemed impossible to everyone else: the miracle that broke the prairie. In his cramped blacksmith shop, John Deere took that discarded steel saw blade and began hammering it into something the world had never seen: a steel plow that would slice through prairie soil like a hot knife through butter. The steel was completely different from cast iron. It was harder, smoother, and non-porous. John theorized that the sticky prairie soil wouldn't stick to polished steel the way it clung to rough cast iron. But proving his theory meant risking his reputation on one test. The moment of truth came on the farm of Lewis Crandall, a neighbor who had been fighting his cast iron plow for months. John hitched his steel plow to Crandall's oxen, and what happened next was pure magic. The plow cut through that impossible prairie soil without stopping, without clogging, without the endless scraping that had made farming a nightmare. For the first time since arriving in Illinois, Crandall plowed a complete field in a single day. Word spread like prairie fire. Farmers came from hundreds of miles away to see this steel plow work miracles in soil that had defeated every other implement. John sold that first plow for $10, equivalent to about $300 today. But he knew he had created something that would change everything. Building an empire on credit and trust. By 1838, John was producing 10 plows a year in his little shop. But demand was exploding faster than he could keep up. Here's where John made a decision that showed his character. He began extending credit to farmers who couldn't pay cash up front. This wasn't just good business, it was revolutionary. John understood that farmers only had money after harvest, but they needed plows before planting. So he let them take the plows on credit, trusting that they'd pay after their crops came in. It was a leap of faith that built incredible loyalty. By 1843, he was producing 400 plows annually. By 1846, that number had jumped to 1,000. Each plow was still individually crafted and personally inspected by John himself. He developed a saying that became the foundation of everything. I will never put my name on a product that does not have in it the best that is in me. In 1848, John made another crucial decision. He moved his operation to Moline, Illinois, right on the Mississippi River, where he could ship his plows anywhere in the expanding nation. The timing seemed perfect. The California gold rush was creating massive demand for food, and John Deere plows were the key to producing it. But John's generous credit policy was creating a ticking time bomb that would nearly destroy everything. The financial disaster that almost ended everything. Here's the part of the John Deere story that most people never hear. In 1857, the company almost went bankrupt, and it was John's own generosity that nearly killed his dream. The panic of 1857 hit America like a sledgehammer. Banks failed overnight, businesses collapsed, and farmers who had been prosperous just months before suddenly couldn't pay their debts. John Deere found himself in a nightmare situation. Farmers across the Midwest owed him over $300,000, equivalent to $10 million today. But with crop prices collapsing, they simply couldn't pay. Picture John pacing his factory floor at 3 a.m., knowing that if just one more major customer defaulted, everything would be gone by sunrise. He had to mortgage his own home to keep the factory running. At one point, Deere had more money owed to him than he had cash on hand. One bad harvest could have ended everything. The stress nearly tore his family apart. Some family members wanted to demand immediate payment from debtors, while others supported John's decision to work with struggling farmers. For months, it looked like the company that had revolutionized American agriculture would become just another casualty of economic panic. But John's character, forged by his father's abandonment and strengthened by years of hard work, wouldn't let him quit. He negotiated with creditors, worked out payment plans with farmers, and slowly, painfully, pulled the company back from the brink. The colors that became a legend. Coming out of the financial crisis stronger than ever, John began standardizing his equipment with colors that would become legendary. The famous John Deere green and yellow wasn't chosen randomly. It was deeply symbolic. Green represented the growing crops that John Deere equipment helped farmers cultivate. Yellow represented the ripe grain ready for harvest. Together, these colors told the complete story of the agricultural cycle that John Deere supported from planting to harvest. When farmers saw those green and yellow machines in the field, they knew they were looking at equipment built by a company that understood farming from the ground up. The son who thought even bigger. In 1868, John made a decision that would shape the company's future for generations. He turned control over to his son, Charles Deere, who had been working in the business since he was a teenager and had absorbed his father's obsession with quality. Charles had a vision that was even bigger than his father's. He saw that American agriculture was about to explode as the Transcontinental Railroad opened vast new markets. John Deere needed to be ready, and that meant thinking beyond individual craftsmanship to mass production without sacrificing quality. Charles expanded the product line beyond plows to include cultivators, harrows, and mowers. More importantly, he created a dealer network that put John Deere equipment within reach of every farmer in America. By 1869, the company had dealers in every state and territory. By 1886, John Deere was producing over 80,000 implements annually, making it the largest plow manufacturer in the world. When John Deere died that year, at age 82, he left behind more than a successful company. He left behind a revolution that had transformed American agriculture. The war that shaped an industry, Deere versus International Harvester. No story of John Deere would be complete without the epic rivalry that shaped American agriculture, the battle between John Deere and International Harvester. International Harvester was formed in 1902 through a massive merger, creating an agricultural giant that dwarfed John Deere in size and resources. I had more money, more factories, and more political influence. They seemed unstoppable. But John Deere had something International Harvester couldn't buy: a reputation for quality and innovation, built over decades of serving farmers. This rivalry drove innovation at a pace that benefited every farmer in America. When International Harvester introduced new technology, John Deere responded with better engineering. When John Deere developed new implements, International Harvester had to match their performance. This competition made American agricultural equipment the best in the world. The rivalry was particularly intense in the Midwest, where factory workers, dealers, and farmers all chose sides in this industrial war. John Deere's victory wasn't achieved through size or financial resources. It was won through superior engineering and unwavering commitment to quality. The tractor revolution that almost left Deere behind. For decades, John Deere resisted getting into the tractor business, believing horses were more reliable than the early unreliable tractors being produced by competitors. But by 1918, it was clear the future was mechanical, and John Deere was falling dangerously behind. The company's entry into tractors was rocky. In 1918, John Deere purchased the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company, which made the Waterloo Boy tractor. These early machines were expensive, unreliable, and difficult to operate. But John Deere engineers applied the same perfectionist philosophy that John himself had used on his plows. The breakthrough came in the 1930s with the Model A and Model B tractors, machines so well built that many are still running today, nearly 90 years later. The Model A and B featured the famous John Deere two-cylinder engine that produced a distinctive putt-putt sound farmers could recognize from miles away. During World War II, these tractors helped American farmers achieve unprecedented productivity, feeding not just America, but much of the Allied world. The modern revolution, from steel to software. The 1960s brought a revolution in agricultural technology that would have amazed John Deere himself. Computerization, hydraulics, and precision engineering transformed farming from an art based on experience and intuition into a science based on data and precision. John Deere was ready for this transformation. The company had invested heavily in research and development throughout the 1950s, building state-of-the-art testing facilities and hiring some of the brightest engineers in the industry. When the technological revolution came, John Deere was leading it, not following it. In 1960, John Deere introduced the new generation of power, a complete line of tractors that set new standards for performance, comfort, and reliability. These tractors featured innovations like synchronized transmissions, independent power takeoff, and hydraulic systems that made farming more efficient and less physically demanding. The 1970s brought the introduction of sound guard cabs which provided farmers with protection from noise, dust, and weather while operating their equipment. This might seem like a small improvement, but for farmers who spent 12 to 16 hours a day on their tractors during planting and harvest seasons, it was revolutionary. The 1980s saw John Deere embrace computer technology in a big way. The company introduced electronic monitoring systems that could track engine performance, fuel consumption, and maintenance needs. Farmers could now optimize their operations based on real data rather than guesswork. But the real revolution came in the 1990s and 2000s with the introduction of GPS technology and precision agriculture. John Deere was one of the first companies to recognize that satellite navigation could transform farming by allowing precise control of planting, fertilizing, and harvesting operations. Today's John Deere equipment is more computer than machine. Modern combines can harvest crops while automatically adjusting for soil conditions, moisture levels, and yield optimization. They can create detailed maps showing exactly how much grain was harvested from every square foot of a field, allowing farmers to optimize their operations with unprecedented precision. The controversy that threatens the legacy. But here's where the John Deere story takes a controversial turn that has farmers fighting mad. The company built on helping farmers become independent now faces accusations of taking that independence away. Modern John Deere equipment is controlled by sophisticated software that only authorized dealers can access. When something breaks, farmers can't fix it themselves like their grandfathers did. They have to wait for dealer service, sometimes for weeks during critical seasons. This right to repair controversy has reached the highest levels of government. The irony is staggering. John Deere built his reputation helping farmers become self-sufficient. Now farmers accuse the company of creating dependence on corporate-controlled technology. A company built on farmer independence now faces accusations of taking that independence away. The battle over repair rights represents a fundamental question. Will farmers maintain the self-reliance that has always defined American agriculture? The empire that feeds the world. Today, John Deere operates in over 30 countries and employs more than 77,000 people worldwide. The company generates over $50 billion in annual revenue, making it not just the largest agricultural equipment manufacturer in the world, but one of the most successful American companies in any industry. The company's product line has expanded far beyond the steel plow that started it all. John Deere now manufactures everything from lawnmowers for suburban homeowners to massive combines that can harvest hundreds of acres per day. The company also produces construction equipment, forestry machinery, and even golf course maintenance equipment. But perhaps the most impressive statistic is this: John Deere equipment is used on farms that produce food for over 2 billion people worldwide. The company that started with one man's determination to build a better plow now helps feed nearly a quarter of the world's population. The John Deere brand has become synonymous with quality, reliability, and innovation in agriculture. Farmers who buy John Deere equipment expect it to last for decades, and the company delivers on that expectation. It's not uncommon to see John Deere tractors from the 1950s and 1960s still working on farms today, a testament to the quality philosophy that John established in that little blacksmith shop in Grand Detour. But the real measure of John Deere's success isn't in dollars or market share. It's in the millions of acres of farmland that feed the world, all made possible by that Vermont blacksmith who refused to accept that prairie farming was impossible. Through all the technological advancement, corporate growth, and global expansion, John Deere has maintained the core philosophy that John established over 180 years ago. Build it right, build it to last, and never compromise on quality. That philosophy has made John Deere not just a successful company, but an American institution that represents the best of American ingenuity, determination, and craftsmanship. From a broken saw blade and $73 to a global empire worth over $50 billion, John Deere proves that American ingenuity and determination can literally change the world. But the company that once freed farmers from impossible soil now faces accusations of creating new forms of dependence. The next time you see that green and yellow machine, remember, you're looking at 180 years of innovation that fed a nation and a modern controversy that could reshape farming forever. Make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories of American agricultural pioneers, and check out the next video on your screen about another company that shaped the way we farm.